inspirational performance, and also with understanding the power of the black body, using my own as a specimen to some degree, but also to kind of speak a little bit more to bigger issues that African Americans are dealing with. I'm trying to get to it in a real, a more poetic format. I didn't want the pieces to be too literal, too direct, so I started making these works that were about physical performance. This is Mule, which takes place in Baltimore, in which I'm pulling a remnant, a telephone pole that had come down in a storm, and then took all of the materials and the guts from inside of these old homes in Baltimore, and I pulled it. And it's funny because when I was doing this work, the thing that was coming up again and again, people would ask, why are you the only one in the piece? Why isn't there other people in the piece? Or why, why is this all about you? And I think that was always a little bit of a disappointment because I never thought that the work was all about me. I felt like it was a place which I really wanted to begin the conversation. And that this work, this individual work, would speak volumes about my interest in kind of exploration. Ta-Nehisi Coates, The World Between Us, and it was talking a little bit about the black body. He's talking about the difficulties that he had in his own personal experiences, understanding what it meant to be black, and understanding all the language, the physicality, and the interactions that would dictate how he would, move through life by understanding his body. I feel like a lot of these earlier works, I'm thinking about that as well. This is Afrocosm, this is Spinning, in which I'm doing a transatlantic journey from an exercise bike. The images behind me begin in Baltimore, and then journey through, to Senegal, Africa. So it was like this mystical journey. Afrocosmonaut Alien, in which I'm using white theater makeup to kind of white myself out, and then the projections happen over top of me, and the idea is that I'm going to fit in between the projection and the wall, almost like love, and that this, in some way, could be a representation of an experience. So, it's funny that people were asking me questions about, this, I guess it would be a little, I call this the inertia cycle, this period of work, but in particular, it was more of a solitary performance practice. And these are all stills from Afrocosmonaut Alien. But actually, things began to change. 2009, when I created a piece titled Lazarus. And Lazarus began with this old car that my friend had that I swore would never move. I told him that he wouldn't be able to ever get this car to move, and one day he drove it in front of my house, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I had no idea that vehicle would ever be able to move myself or anybody else. I just thought it was done, but somehow he brought it back to life. And I was, it inspired me to create a piece. And that was, and hence the title Lazarus, was this idea that something that's supposed to be moving us, a group of people coming together seemingly out of nowhere, helped to get this vehicle going. And what was great about working with people who might not necessarily be trained performers is it kind of stretches the imagination and it places the viewer inside of the piece. Because I think viewers can tell when someone is trained, or when you're dealing with a trained performer versus you're dealing with maybe a group of people that really just want to help you with the project. And that's what happened. The piece starts out with the Volvo vehicle that's not moving, but gradually, one at a time, individual starts out with this guy who, an old friend of mine, begins to push this car along the road, and gradually, as it's moving, more and more people, a collective, come and huddle around the vehicle and move it, while I'm inside. So it becomes like this metaphor of this experience, at least of this transition of going from what seems like a performance in which, you know, I'm front and center to a performance in which other people are becoming part of that conversation. You know, I guess I'm moving to dark matter. I mean, this is where I'm going. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this deviation, you know, this change, in which at first, you know, I felt really comfortable articulating it all on my own, but gradually I was excited by the fact that people wanted to help in this journey, and even more so, played a really important role to represent myself throughout in other bodies. This is Ben-Hur. This is Charlton Heston. This is the 1953, I believe, or 57. But it was the classic that my parents watched again and again every Easter. And there was one moment in Ben-Hur that spoke to me more than any others, and that was the slave galley scene. And in part, the slave galley scene seemed a little odd to me because I'd always associated slavery with black folks. And so when I saw like Charlton Heston with this golden skin, I was like, well, that just kind of opened up to me this idea of what a slave was. But again, we had the situation where a vessel that's supposed to be moving individuals is being powered by individuals, and that was exciting. That you had this ship that was controlled by the Romans that on cadence and on command would, you know, this group of people would push it through the water. And, you know, there was different paces. There was the battle speed, there was the ramming speed, there was the cruising speed. And so, you know, this was in the back of my mind. And then a few years ago, I had the opportunity to create a performance piece at the corporate museum. And this is about a 5-foot platform, and they're on these water rowers. And it's a group of 6 individuals, and all of them are pushing themselves to the limit until they collapse, until there's nothing left. I was interested in this primarily in my research. I found you know, this incredible book called Choreographic Empathy, and this other book called gosh, what was the name of it? The Poetics of Failure by Susan Bales. And what was great about it is that there was actually a theory, and there's a lot of performance theory based on this idea of people pushing themselves to a physical limit until there's a collapse, and that collapse could be really a wonderful thing. It's kind of an unpredicted thing. It's something that can't be scripted. So working with a group of 6 performers, some of them collectors, some of them artists. The gentleman all the way in the back is actually a technical writer. The one up front is an anesthesiologist in the Washington, D.C. area. His name is Daryl Atwell, and he volunteered to be in the work. So what happened is that we have a DJ, which you can't see, and then you have a Haitian drummer at the very base, and there's this incredible intense cadence, which at first seems very beautiful. All the bodies are moving together in unison. It's calm, cool, collected. But after an intense, maybe 30-minute duration, it starts to get ugly. You know, what starts out as something that looks like a kind of formal piece kind of breaks into every man for himself. You weren't sure who was going to be the last one on the rowing machine until finally, inevitably, one of the youngest guys on the crew, the youngest, and probably one of the strongest guys in the crew, who may not have had the best form, was always the one who ended the piece. The person up front, Daryl, who actually rowed before, and also was the lead rower, and everybody was watching him, he actually was one of the first 3 people to drop out because he had correct form, and he was putting his body to a different kind of intensity than everyone else. And it was always interesting to see how it would end, even though I had an idea from rehearsal how it would work out, but you never would know. I know the last 2 people were always a lot more competitive than you know, the first 2 or 3 that would quit. You know, a lot can be said about, you know, what is the meaning of this piece. So a lot of my work, I try to withhold like specifics. I like to create the circumstance, this environment in which anything can happen, but it also kind of limits my understanding of, you know, specifically what I'm trying to do. And this was really simple. I'm trying to create a circumstance in which, after grueling hour on this exercise machine, individuals would drop out one at a time. Then, you know, folks would come up to me and they would say, you know, was this supposed to symbolize a slave ship? Which I thought was great, because I just never, you know, other than Ben-Hur, there was, you know, the idea of, like, you know, slaves rowing themselves across the mid-Atlantic. Just seemed, you know, really foreign. I mean, I was thinking it in a really abstract way, but the spectators were thinking of it in a really literal way. I mean, here you have these individuals in ties and dress shirts in this neoclassic surrounding, pushing themselves physically, and still, you know, it's like, because it's the black body, you cannot get too far away from this idea of slavery. It's right there. So this is kind of leading me to, you know, this performance piece that everybody hopefully will get a chance to take a look at this afternoon, Dark Matter. In Washington, D.C., and many other urban centers, they have something called CPEDs, which are environmental lights that the police use to deter crime. And what I loved about it was that in essence, the police were creating like these environments in which they weren't necessarily deterring crime, but they were moving it from one location to the other. Because what they did is they light up a corner to give people this opportunity, you know, drugs, prostitution, whatever they didn't want to have happen in that corner. They used the lights, so they'd light that corner, they would drive it somewhere else. I mean, this was a huge tool for the gentrification of Washington, D.C. But as an artist driving by, you know, these you know, light towers, I kept wondering what could happen in that space. How could it be reactivated? And so for, you know, years, I'd say maybe 2-3 years, I was thinking I want to do a performance in that light. And then, you know, the last couple of years, you know, you could have written a script about, you know, the revelation of police brutality. And we know it's existed, but I don't think that as a public we've been confronted with it in the way that we have over the last 2 years. And I am fascinated with the imagery. In particular, years, you know, had passed, my mom had told me, you know, be careful of this, be careful of this. If you don't watch this, you're going to be in trouble. Put both hands on the steering wheel. You know, make sure you let that police officer know when you're reaching for the glove box. All these things, which make sense to me, but when you see the visual imagery that's been coming out in the last couple of years, it's evidence. You know, I mean, of course, you know, there was always the black body. There was always physical evidence of the black body and upon the black body, the damage that had been done. But actually seeing police, you know, cold blood shoot down somebody that's running away from them, watching someone, you know, repeatedly shoot someone who's on the ground. I mean, I shouldn't be so shocked to see it, but at the same time, this visual imagery is compelling because it is that story, that you know, the stories that my mother told me, you know, over and over again, happening in real time with real people, and then, you know, there's a certain amount of helplessness that overcomes you because obviously the act has already happened. So how do you interact with these images? How do you come to terms with it? The conversation really began with me and with the imagery that came out of Ferguson. The smoke, the figures, the heroic figures, the awareness of a camera. You know, that this gentleman who is right here, who is like street theater, is very aware of what he's doing. He's very aware of his physical gestures. And to me, it had a theatricality about it that I really wanted to try to capture and present with my work. This is the first performance that we did in York. This was Dark Matter. And you know, you might wonder, like, well, where did you get that title from, Dark Matter? I had this conversation with a physicist, actually, when I was in a residency. Her name was Lisa Randall, and she was talking about dark matter, and she was talking about it in a really abstract way. She was like, we can't see it, it's a part of us, it's not really black. It can only, you know, if you're looking at dark matter in outer space with a telescope, you cannot see it, it's invisible. The only way you can see dark matter is if there's a bright light that's illuminating it from behind. And I think, you know, it's strange how, you know, you get your influences. So on one hand, I'm looking at this Ferguson footage, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, and then I'm having this conversation with a physicist who's talking about dark matter, and I can't help but think about black identity. And I go up to her afterwards, and I, you know, and this is if you look up Lisa Randall, she's a very well-respected physicist, the first woman to ever be tenured at Harvard University. And I thought, man, I'm out on a limb, but I'm going to ask her. I'm going to say, were you talking about race when you were talking about, you know, all of this science in regards to dark matter? And the fascinating thing is that, you know, her eyes lit up and she said, yes, I was talking about race. You know, I had my first chapter, I'm going to have to send it to you because it was all about race, and the editor told me to take it out. And so we began like this conversation about it, about the word, about the concept, about the science behind it, about how it permeates and how it's part of everything, but it's ignored. So this is the Dark Matters performance that happened in DuPont Circle. This is Dunjack. He's a break dancer. I guess we could call it a veteran break dancer. He's been doing it for, I guess, over 20 years. And I think that's what's great about my crew as well, is a lot of them are very experienced. And they didn't, I mean, to be you know, a 29, 30, 31-year-old break dancer, that's like your twilight of your break dancing career. I mean, they take their bodies and they fall on the ground again and again and again. And I think that's what's kind of heroic about it, because, you know, you see a kid do it, and it's no sweat. But when you see a 29-year-old man hit the ground and you hear it, you know, the wind come out of them, and you see them tumble, you know that it's something that most people can't do. I mean, they do it in a rhythmic way that kind of like mirrors like a heartbeat, or like a natural sounds. I mean, the squeaking of the tennis shoe, I mean, it becomes symbolic. So what happened for me is like, well, how did you come about like doing a breakdancing performance? Well, it came about organically. I was thinking, well, if I wanted to show, you know, what millennials look like when they protest, which is very different than if you look at a Life magazine from 1968, you look at the Watts riots, it's very different. And I think what part of it is the awareness of the camera and the awareness of the environment. And it's also, it's reflective of our generation. I began these conversations with a local arts coordinator. His name is Peter Chang, and we began having talks about, like, you know, how would I begin to work with breakdancers? How could something like that happen? And, you know, I started the conversation by talking about, I used to try to do it all on my own. I realized, you know, as I was recruiting breakdancers, that I needed to get breakdancers work. It wasn't somewhere I could inject myself to run into the picture. And somehow I had to let them do it, let the breakdancers do it. And they became like a really great symbol, because breakdancing has a kind of historic ties to protest, to the working class, to kids who were finding a creative outlet, in some ways a response to, you know, horrible living conditions, being neglected. And this horizontal dance form emerged, and what was super exciting and innovative is that it's like the power moves were upright. Like if you see like a break dancer do a power move, they are almost standing up, but they're rotating, you know, their hands, their feet are straight up in the air, they're upside down. And for me, I wanted to create a story in which the break dancers could begin to tell a narrative and could begin to talk about the physicality of protest. Actually, this part of dark matter is called B-Boy Stride. This is Ryan and Coleman, and both of them are scoping the space, and they're interacting with each other, and you don't necessarily know if it's going to end up okay for the both of them. You don't know if they're going to fight each other or if they're going to fight everybody around, but you have to take in the black body. And then what ensues is a sequence that's based on some of these images that I showed you previously about protests, riots. Going back to the theatricality of protests, in Baltimore, I think that the body laying on the road, the body by itself, with no one there, became a really powerful symbol. And there was one moment in this performance in which the protagonist, Church, is on the ground, and he was on the ground for, I think at first 2 minutes, and then gradually we reduced it, but the amount of time that we had on the ground was really important because it was stillness. I mean, these gentlemen are used to frenetic movement, constantly moving, and for them to stop motion, it was just as powerful as if they were doing a dynamic movement or they were doing one of these power moves that I spoke about. And it's one of the hardest things to get a breakdancer to do is just to hold a pose. It's like, and some of you might wonder, where all of this is coming from. I'm also, trained in theater. This is what I spent 4 years thinking that I was going to be doing for the rest of my life, and in part I did. Just maybe not the way that I thought. I started out looking at plays like Dutchman, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, August Wilson, to name a few. But what I loved about these protest plays was they weren't these formal pieces. They had the power to get people to start thinking about their living conditions and start thinking about how the spectator could be involved. When I was reading about this, when 1972, when this play was mounted, it was originally performed in 1967, but in the 70s it really kind of took off. They would have people that would come onto the stage after the performance and would make a list of demands and say, is this something that you want to see happen to your child? Is this something that you want to see happen to someone that you love? If it's not, then we have to do something about it. We need to get to the streets. We need to lay down and stop traffic. But another thought came to me when I was in theater and I was really exploring physical theater with practitioners like Mesvold and Meyerhold. This was shot in the 1920s, and this is biomechanics, in which he believed that a group of individuals in uniform could really change the world on stage and get people to start thinking about their social situation differently. And he was Soviet, and he was sandwiched between the revolution and the counter-revolution, and he ended up in jail, and he was killed. His family was killed. So I feel like these were people that inspired me because they understood that the power of theatrics wasn't something that was limited to a black box. That what you do in a space where the 6 performers could reverberate outside maybe what we understand. Now I hold back from calling myself an activist because in part I think it is theatrics. It's not like I'm saying that what we're going to do is we're going to change the world, but we're going to hopefully get people to think and get people to understand, maybe initiate, be the catalyst of change. And that's what I'm hoping for. Maybe I'm starting small, but I feel like a catalyst can be a really powerful thing as well. And I look at these performers and the physical discipline that's involved, and I think about breakdancers, actually. I saw this photo and I thought a lot about it, as well as capoeira, which is based out of Brazil, but was a martial arts technique used by slaves to prepare for slave revolt. There's a lot of different layers that you can look at. On one hand, you can walk in and you say, okay, it's breakdancing. It's entertainment. Okay, and if you want to take, if that's all you want to take, then that's fine. It's there for your taking. But if you dig a little deeper, I mean, the tradition of breakdancing doesn't begin in the late 60s, early 70s. This is Africa Bambaataa, and he was one of the people in the late 60s and early 70s said, no, breakdancing is important. It's important. It's important for our kids and for our youth to be involved in breakdancing. Starting Zoo Kings, you know, and as well as other breakdancing crews, he began to understand that, you know, breakdancing, they call it battle for a reason. Because in some way it was diffusing this energy, this conflict, you know, energy, and breakdancing to some degree is about combat. Same way as capoeira, you know, it's like preparation for revolution. So this is the line design. This is the dance crew that I've been working with for the last 2 years. And it's fascinating because we started out, and I tell you what I love about doing this performance 2 years ago that's much more difficult than now. 2 years ago, what we would do is we went to York, Pennsylvania, and very few people knew what we were going to do. We billed it as a breakdancing performance. People came out and, let's see, and witnessed it. But as you can see, there were a whole bunch of kids because they were thinking that this was going to be pure entertainment. And then when the smoke came, the parents grabbed their kids and they started walking away. I think because then it became a little bit maybe too intense. It became too real, which you know might very well seem like something that's entertainment. You know, that's the most enticing part. It's like you're gonna swallow a pill. I don't think that didactic has to be a bad word in our making. I think a lot of people give didactic artwork a bad rap. I think that there is a lot of troubling or maybe didactic pieces that struggle with content. In part, it struggles with content because they're trying to say something. As you know, W.E.B. Du Bois says, I could care less if you're making art that's about anything other than about the struggle. I think some of us have a little bit more of a choice. But I think that when Du Bois said that, it's as he was occupied in 1913, it's how am I going to uplift my people? If you're going to paint a pretty picture, that's great, but that's not my concern. My concern is to uplift our people. And if you can create work that's about that, then that's wonderful. If not, I don't have much interest in it. And then there was huge debates between Alain Locke and Du Bois about, you know, what should be the role of the black artist. But I don't think that, you know, at the same time, I don't think that, I think for the people who watch this and only can see the formal elements, I think they're maybe a little bit more liberated than myself. But for me, it is always about the struggle. And it's always about this, at least if not an internal struggle, then maybe it is an external one, like for Dark Matters. Yeah, so again, what I was saying is that part of the excitement was that people didn't know what to expect. This wasn't built as a performance that was a timely performance. It wasn't built as a performance that was to enlighten anybody. It was built as a breakdancing piece. And we kind of had a little bit of this element of surprise. And I think that's a little harder to do now because of the situation. Dorian Johnson, Michael Brown, I mean, that again was the idea of the Du Bois stride, that this was going to happen, and that even though they had this relationship and this bond together, you weren't quite sure if it was going to be adversarial. So this is York, Pennsylvania, and one of the wonderful things I always love about these photos is that you can always see the video camera in the shot. You see all these faces, and then that becomes part of the theater, that the spectators are making it happen. There's one thing to see it in the video, but when you're live and you're hearing the sounds, the breathing, you're hearing the skip of the floor because of the sneakers that the breakdancers are wearing. It becomes a different kind of experience. The smoke. Yeah, I'm not sure if the smoke's going to happen today. But in part, I mean, they shifted the smoke. I mean, their movements kind of propelled, like, moved the smoke in the environment, and that's something that there's only one particular kind of dancer, I feel, with that kind of fluidity, that kind of movement is possible with, and that's break dancers. So part of my excitement here is that I have 6 break dancers and 1 DJ that are creating art and creating an art piece. And some people might ask, well, why is this art? And my question back is like, why isn't it? Because you can't sell it. You can't sell the work that they've created. I think that there's poetics to this. One of the great things that Lee Goldberg said about performance art is that it falls between the cracks. And that it's not dance, it's not theater, it's something that you can't really describe. It's something that, maybe when you're looking at the performance tonight, you'll say, well, wait a second, that looks like breakdancing. Well, no, wait, that looks like maybe capoeira. No, wait, maybe that is theater. Or no, this seems like a performance art moment. Well, I think that's part of the reason why performance art is so many people have a problem with it. Because it fails to fit into easy definitions. And that's what you're going to be looking at in Dark Matter. This was an indoor performance we did at the Driscoll Center, which I wanted to show you because I feel like it's going to probably be most similar to what you're going to be witnessing today. And this is, this is a 15 by 15 foot square that all of this action is happening. And how do you mount a protest in a 15 by 15 foot area? And how do you create like what seems like an uprising inside of a small intimate space? Well, these guys do it. It's a glimpse of it. It's a stylization. I guess I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I want you to see it. I think I've spent enough time going on. But I don't think I will probably ever have an opportunity to be able to work with a group of individuals quite like this. With the same kind of discipline that these aren't trained dancers, but you don't know that because they spend so much time training themselves. And that they all have incredible stories of why they have their b-boy names. Gunjack will tell you the story about how did you get your name, Gunjack, and he'll tell you about the person who trained him and the person who trained Gunjack mentor, and how they all took the same name. And it's just an amazing story of camaraderie. One of the things that I see with the b-boy crew is they are openly affectionate to each other. They will hug each other for a long period of time, and it is okay. I think that's what's super about it is they're in touch with their bodies. They're in touch with I guess the sentimentality, the life maybe of a b-boy at the twilight of their career. It's kind of a wonderful thing to see because they might not be able to do everything that they could do when they were 19, but they're much smarter. And they're less afraid to be affectionate to one another and to tell each other when they've done a good job. I mean, I was rehearsing a few minutes ago. They'll laugh if something doesn't go out right, and they'll say, "Wow!" Collectively, everybody go, "Whoa!" when it goes well. And in taking the b-boys out of the environment in which they're constantly competing against each other, and they're working to create a piece like Dark Matters was really kind of was a new thing for everyone. And I hope not only folks come out and marvel at their physical expertise because they're pretty marvelous. But I want people to really think about the content and try to figure out where's that space in between where it's beautiful to watch, but it's maybe twisting your insides at the same time.